Hi, so this is a little video walkthrough about the Milestones feature. Milestone feature is a very powerful tool inside the OSIOS project management system. So right now I'm on screen, I'm actually inside a dummy project if you like. This one's called iPhone app OSIOS Mockup. That's a real application that'll be coming out soon, so if you haven't checked that out already, then check that out on the various app stores. I've got just one room here at the moment called development, so we're just going to click through into that. And you're possibly familiar with this layout already. And you may be familiar, we've got three different kind of view areas here. We've got universal view, where we can view comments that are made across the whole application. And we've got specific view, where we can look at individual screens and look at different comments that are made against those particular screens. And we've got this third option here, which is milestones. So we're going to click in there and take a look. So I've got a couple set up here. I'm just going to delete those for now, so we can start from scratch. So if you've not set up any milestones before, you're going to see a screen that's pretty similar to this. You can have your project name at the top here, the room that you're currently in, and then you've got these three sub options here: schedule, scope, and approval. Schedule, perhaps as the name implies, is when the task needs to be completed by. Scope is a description of that task, and approval basically tells us if our client has approved those changes. So let me just explain that a little bit more. So once you set up a milestone and you then complete the work, you can come back into this area and say that I've now completed that. Your client will then get a message and be asked to confirm if that is indeed completed and they're happy with that. They can either basically reject that, in which case they're going to ask you to do some additional work, or they can agree and approve those, and then that obviously allows you to move on to the next step. So using that sort of system, it's very, very clear what's been approved and what hasn't, and you have a record there which can be very useful perhaps towards the end of the project, looking back about what tasks were completed, by who and when, etc. So let's set up a couple of examples here. So we've got to, first of all, we need to add a category. Now you might need just one category, or you might need several depending on the complexity of your project. So I'm just going to call this one design as an example. And currently we have no milestones inside this category, so we're just going to click on the plus button here, and we're going to give the milestone a name. So I'm going to start with my first milestone, which is fairly typical, which is a wireframe. And I'm going to give us a week to do that. And if I wish to set a particular time, I can do. I'm not going to take that option right now, but I will select who is responsible for completing that task, that milestone. And I'm going to set myself, Simon, and then hit add a milestone. And as you can see, that's now clearly displayed inside the category design. The first category design, we've got a milestone called wireframe, and it gives us a countdown of when that's due, because actually the countdown is actually more important, more relevant than the actual date, but the date's there as well. And importantly, of course, it's listing who's that's been tasked to. So we're just going to create another one, and I'm going to create the next milestone. I'm going to call that, what should I call that? Call that illustrated screens. Okay, can't spell, so let's whack another L in there. And I'm going to give myself a little bit longer to achieve that. And this time I will set a time. I'm going to set it for 9 o'clock in the morning. Nice early morning to get that done. And set myself again to complete that. Great, and you can see, so very clearly listed, we've got our first milestone wireframe, the second one illustrated screens. Okay, now what we can do then is, if we wish, we can go to scope, and we can see these are listed here. So I'm going to click on the first one, wireframe, and currently we don't have any extra details given against this, but this is where I can add a description, a deliverable, and the purpose. So description is a very brief overview of what basically that word means. Deliverable is how do we know when it's been completed, so what is a deliverable, and the purpose, what's the purpose of this section or this milestone. Let me click on edit. So quick description, wireframe is a pen and ink rough sketch of the key critical pages of this app. Okay. Deliverable will be a wireframe mockup where the client can click through the basic app architecture. As you can see, spelling's not my strong point. I'm not sure that's right either, but there we go. For early, I'm actually going into the purpose here a little bit. But anyway, it's a basic deliverable. And if you've not used the play feature in OSIOS, it's a very powerful feature. And this is where it allows us to actually deliver, even in wireframe sketch form, a mock-up that the client can click through. So this is a very powerful way for your client to understand the layout that you're intending to do for this application. Of course, if there is any early feedback at that stage, it's a lot easier to correct then than much later in the project when perhaps you've done visuals or maybe even gone into the coding section. Purpose is to get early feedback and reach agreement on the critical shape of the app. Okay, and of course your description, deliverable and purpose might be quite different to that, but that's a reasonable example. So I'm just going to save that. And so very quickly, I've got a milestone listed with a date and time and who's responsible and a description, deliverable and purpose for it. So very quick to set up. Now this is very useful for your clients. So they come in here perhaps when a task has been completed, and they can then read through the description, deliverable, and they can say yes, you know, they've very clearly delivered upon those deliverables and those information, and then they can approve that and allow you to move forward. Let's just quickly move over to the approval section. Okay, so again, we don't have anything set up currently. So I've clicked on wireframe. Has this milestone been completed? Of course I haven't done it yet, but let's just pretend I have. Submit for approval, and you can see that my name's listed there and the date that it was achieved. Client can go in here and just click and confirm that that's been completed and allow us to move on to the next task. Now of course you may have tasks that are done in parallel. Of course you can be working on other tasks at the same time, but it's a very clear and really transparent way of recording different key stages of the app. So this is really great, and we've found through some experience and after talking to lots of mobile app development companies that this is really what they're after, to provide that transparency so that if there is a conversation perhaps towards the end of the project about any change in scope or when tasks were completed by and by whom, then you have this to fall back on and a really clear record that really is undisputable. So there's a little walkthrough of the milestones section. Have a click through, walk through some of the other videos and get a better feel for how OSIOS works. If you have any early feedback, we'd love to get that as we're making changes and improvements to this all the time. Many thanks.